Hey, welcome back to Dr. Saddam Kenya. Today's video is about yeast infection. How do you know you have a yeast infection, especially for ladies and women? So let's meet after the short break. Yeast infections are usually caused by several factors, and the causal agent for most yeast infection in ladies is a fungus known by the name Candida albicans. Candida albicans is one of the fungus that is mostly classified also as normal flora, since it's usually found across different parts of your body, and it has its benefits as well. The problem that usually happens is that yeast infection usually just arises when the populations of this fungus tend to increase drastically, either to exposure to strong antibiotics that wipe out the normal flora, or etc. So there are several symptoms that you're most likely to experience once you have this kind of infection or a yeast infection. The most common symptom that most ladies tend to experience with the yeast infection is having a white or yellow or grayish discharge. One great distinction between yeast infection and bacterial infections, since bacterial infections as well produce discharge, is that for the yeast infection, the discharge doesn't really have any smell. So you'll have this discharge, but it won't really have any bad smell as compared to any bacterial infection. So that is one important thing for you to note, that if you are having a discharge, probably a white or a yellow or a grayish discharge, that doesn't really have a bad smell, that is an indication that you're having a yeast infection. The other important symptom that you're most likely to have, probably even in the onset of a yeast infection, is having an itchiness along the vulva and the vaginal parts. And this is very common with the most fungal infections that affect the skin. And this itching is usually quite vigorous. It doesn't really appear, and once you scrub or you scratch that place that is itching, there is usually a swelling that is usually left there. So that is something that is quite common. You'd have this regular itching, and immediately you scratch that part, the swelling appears. So that is a quite close indication that you probably have a yeast infection, if you have the discharge as well. Other symptoms that tend to appear with the yeast infection is the vulva and parts of the vagina tend to appear reddish, and that is due to inflammation caused by the fungus. The other symptom that some women will also experience is having a fever. For some ladies, that is quite common. You could have a fever, probably immediately you have this infection. I'll try and talk about what you can do to tackle a yeast infection in the next video. But I believe you have tried to understand, or you have understood what symptoms are associated with the yeast infection. In summary, the most important thing you need to check out when you're having a yeast infection is that you'll have some discharge. One thing to note about the discharge is that the discharge doesn't really have a bad smell. It is just a discharge, but doesn't have a bad smell. And the other important thing that you're most likely to experience with the yeast infection is that you will have some itchiness that would appear or would occur around your genital parts, especially for the ladies. Lastly, one thing that I was forgetting is about the nature of the discharge that you'll have. In some ladies, the discharge tends to appear curdlish, just like curdled milk or fermented milk. It tends to have that sort of appearance. And another thing that can occur in some ladies is that they tend to have a yeastish type of smell coming out of their vagina. I believe if you're not familiar to a yeast smell, you can get a sachet of yeast that is usually used to bake bread, and have it in some water, some warm water, and add some sugar. The smell that will come out of that is quite indicative or quite familiar to what a yeast infection produces. So Thank you guys for watching this video, and let's meet in the next video.